Good Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Zach here, and I've been talking with a few people lately and also been seeing more awareness increasing about phytoestrogens. And I mean, I've done a video series in the past on male sexual health, and I've been talked about the detriments that they can bring to our health. And I wanted to go just in this video here more specifically into what phytoestrogens are, what they do in the body, and just get more in depth into those specifically. First of all, phytoestrogens mimic estradiol in the body, which is a very potent estrogen. They aren't as strong as estradiol in most cases, and in a few rare cases they actually are anti-estrogenic, and this is in the sense that they bind up with estrogen receptors in the body, and they don't leave enough receptors left for estrogen in your body to take root and have its effect. So this is why some people talk about phytoestrogens being preventative to certain types of cancers, etc. It's because estrogen-dominant cancers, which are about 95% of cancers, have receptors on them, and when the estrogens bind with them, but instead they try to bind with them, but there's a phytoestrogen bound there, they're not going to be able to do their effect. And the phytoestrogens are less estrogenic, but they're still estrogenic than estradiol, which is a very potent estrogen. Now, there's also problems with xenoestrogens, which are plastic or man-made estrogens that are floating around in our bodies from exposure. And a lot of people talk about using phytoestrogens to prevent them from accumulating in our body and causing imbalances in our endocrine system and other bodily functions. Now, what I would, right off the bat, my first feeling around that is that, well, why not just limit our exposure to xenoestrogens in every way possible instead of necessarily taking high doses of phytoestrogens if we don't know the effects over the long period of time that phytoestrogens can have. I personally am quite skeptical of a lot of the science out there that is promoting high dosages of phytoestrogens because it is often in relation to soy. And, you know, soy is the biggest agricultural crop, or one of the biggest next to corn and some others, in terms of food that's being grown on the planet right now. And it's really hard to tell what markets are the sources for the funding of a lot of this research. Another thing that some people bring up is examples of the Okinawans who consume soy on a regular basis and say, well, they're living a long time, so we need to eat soy, so people started taking soy for that reason. However, our use of soy, and this is just focusing on soy right now because soy is perhaps the highest source of phytoestrogens in the North American diet. There are other types of foods that are higher, but our culture's use of it far surpasses any other sources of it in our diets. So when we consume soy in all these different processed foods, soybean oil, soy protein mixed into to cut hamburger meat and fast food, soy is basically on anything pre-packaged that you look at. Then of course there's tofu. People are drinking several glasses of soy milk a day to replace cow's milk. Fake soy meats, soy cheese, etc. And then even the more so-called healthier soy things, soy protein powder, soy baby formula, and the so-called healthier soy products like fermented tempeh and natto, and of course soy sauce, miso, and other fermented sort of like condiments that are made from soy are very small amounts, but those just on top of everything else is just like overkill, no pun intended, of soy and phytoestrogens. So yeah, the Okinawans, when they're eating like a little bit of tofu every day, it does not come close to the amount of soy in the diet of North Americans. It surpasses that. It's like, that's the thing with our cultures. We take something, and this happens in health food all the time, we take something, we latch on it, and we run with it, and we overdo it by doing massive quantities of it. And also, in Okinawa, they only use tofu. They don't use several different high phytoestrogen containing foods all at once in unison in their diet. So they would be using tofu and maybe sometimes green tea. And those are really the two highest sources of phytoestrogens in the Okinawan diet. And if you also look at the other longevity cultures around the world, they have 1 or 2 medium to high sources of phytoestrogens, and that's about it. So in Hunzas in Pakistan, they traditionally consumed flax seeds and some sprouted beans, which are medium high sources of phytoestrogens. Then in the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, they consume beans. That's their medium level of quantity of phytoestrogens in their diet. And you look at these other places and similarly they have 1 or 2 at most. But in North America, we're doing something different, or at least in industrialized sort of health food cultures, or even non-health food cultures, we're doing something that's a little odd, where we're taking what we see as all these top superfoods, and I don't even want to use the term superfoods because they're not really super, they're just these supposedly really healthy foods according to these studies, because they say, well, let's study the Okinawans, we see that all their blood profiles and all this stuff is showing great results, and it's because of this food, and over here it's because of that food, so let's just take all these great foods and put them together. And you end up with a diet, and not everyone's going to be eating all these things, but people say to drink glass of red wine every day, drink some green tea, make sure you're eating lots of beans and grains, consume tofu and soy products, also consume the flax seeds and flax oil. Yet all these are the highest sources of phytoestrogens in our diet, and there's no culture that ever did that, consume this quantity of them. And now, specifically, I believe phytoestrogens are more detrimental in excess in males than females, because we have a set number of estrogen receptors, and although phytoestrogens are a little bit weaker than estradiol, if a male already doesn't have that much estradiol, but he has a large number of estrogen receptors throughout his body, having the phytoestrogens plug into some of these receptors is just creating excess estrogen, because there's still going to be room for the estradiol to plug in around the other receptor sites that have the phytoestrogen, so it's just going to be a net result of excess estrogen.